Yes, hello. Hello. I would introduce myself. Does anyone not know me? Oh, that's good. That's good, people. Oh, shut up. I'm Kat, and previously I've always started the talks by saying, hello, I'm Kat, and I'm a druid. And at the last talk I was at, someone came to me after and said, I nearly walked out then when you said druid, because it's got such bad associations. And she explained. And I've looked at various druid organisations at the moment on Tinterweb and seen a whole load of stuff going on in America regarding an American druid organisation. And there are a lot of bad associations with druids at the moment, it seems. But the word druid is the closest word to what I do, which is, broadly speaking, seeing the sacred in nature. It's seeing the connection with the world around us. And I primarily do that using stories. So I write, I love hearing other people's stories, I love telling stories. I love how technology is helping us tell our stories. So we have the video here reaching out across the world. We have blogs, we have YouTube, we've got all these wonderful things. And it doesn't really matter what you call yourself because people will find you, I think. So in the way that people sort of wander in and think, oh, this talk might be good. And you never know what is going to inspire you. And I rather love that. Because I want to talk about the pagan community today. And when I say that, when people used to think that meant things like the Pagan Federation and the Children of Artemis and all these different organisations. The pagan community was made up of words like druid or witch or heathen or whatever, and then made up of organisations of people with those words. But that really isn't the case anymore. Come in, it's fine. The pagan community, as I see it at the moment, is such a broad thing that pagan is the only umbrella term I can use. And even that some people don't agree with. But broadly speaking, we come together with shared belief. We come together as a community. And I'm sort of looking at this and thinking, well, what does this mean for us now? And I don't want to talk about it in terms of vague, fluffy terms, like druid means this, and witch means this, and heathen means this. There's so much cross-section of each one. There's so much of shared belief. And, oh, the camera takes away. And I want to see where the community goes, and I wanted to talk about that, because when you see the pagan community, and I mean see it, it's at events like this, it's at pagan camps, it's when we all come together from miles away to spend a few hours together. But it is very much also the internet. It is those social spaces that have sprung up. And like it or not, Facebook and the Twitter and the Instagram and all the rest of it, this is where people are finding their communities now. And while being here in person is lovely, and I always get to meet people I've never met before, but I know because of those social media, it's very much a thing of we are a community on that media. So the pagan community, as I see it evolving, is something new. And I thought to myself, this is very appropriate really, because paganism as we see it now is something new. If you go to any of Ronald Hutton's talks or read any of his books, you'll read the history of paganism, the historical, archaeological, anthropological evolution. But pagans now, as in all you guys and me, everyone in this building, it's a very different thing because we're living our paganism. We're not talking about it theoretically, we're talking about it really. We're talking about it hands-on. And I'm talking about what I do. The next person will talk about what she does. Later, Dave the Bard will sing about what he does. We all communicate it in different ways, and we all consume it in different ways. And this paganism that we live is such a new thing when the Druid Network got charity status a few years ago, I was involved in that in some way. And the primary problem was that the Druid Network was approaching the Charities Commission to be a legitimate charity, and their problem was you have no God and you have no book, so how can you be a religion? And it's like, we have got gods, tons of them. We've got books, tons of them, but we don't have a dogma. And that was a problem, and eventually it had to be got round, and this is the epitome of where we are, because paganism is going, we're not going to follow your outdated dogmas. We don't. We're forging our new way. And it's very individual and at the same time very united. And this is absolutely new. And you see the other faiths, all of the main faiths, struggling to retain followers because they can't quite grasp it. They've had their traditions, but they're not really relevant anymore to everybody. So they're losing people. Whereas paganism is allegedly, apparently, the fastest growing faith in the world, if you call it a faith. And some people don't. And this is the thing, it's all very individual. It's very subjective. You see it as you are understanding it in here and feeling it here and then living it and speaking it here. So you have many pagans who quietly get on with their jobs and look absolutely normal, for whatever normal means these days. I was learning about my Druidry and going to work in an office in London in a suit and still managing to stare out of the bus windows at the Thames and go, wow. So you're feeling the wildness in London at the same time as you're a commuter, you know, that most normal of things. It really isn't. If you get chatting to some commuters, they're just as weird as the rest of them. But one of them was me. But it's very much the thing of you are allowed to be pagan publicly, like what I do, or you're allowed to do it privately. You are allowed to do paganism in whatever way you choose. Which is why I find it funny on those social medias when you find people trying to police paganism. And I don't mean the Pagan Police Association, because they don't do that, actually. The Pagan Police Association are lovely and generally are helping police officers who are pagans, which is revolutionary within that organisation. But there are always people who are wanting to say, oh, that's wrong. That's not right. How can you do that and call yourself a pagan? How can you go for a smoke and call yourself a pagan? How can you eat meat and call yourself a pagan? You know, whatever it is, whatever your limits are. And for some people, they try and impose them on others. And I look at it and I laugh, and this is exactly what many pagans were trying to get away from. This is that dogma again. This is the schoolyard Christianity of, here's what you do that is good, here's what you do that is bad, and if you do what is bad, you get spanked. If you're lucky. And there we go, you're all weird. It's, in paganism, if you want to get spanked, you just ask nicely. It's the thing of, we have a much bigger playing field, if you like. We have the world. We have the whole of nature. I've been stopped by Jehovah's Witnesses in the street, and you know how they do. It's like, do you know your God? Right in your face. Have you seen God? And I'm just like, yeah. And I actually did that because I didn't know what to say, because people don't get in my face like that very much on the street in stains. And I just stamped on the floor like a flipping horse, or Dave the Bard. And it's the thing of, he just looked at me in total confusion. I'm saying, well, this is my God, this is my goddess, this is all of this, all of this. It's like, do I want a tattoo of the goddess? No, I've got one. Look, it's called my butt, my boobs, and all of this. And we are God and we are goddess. We carry that sacred within us because we're part of nature. So who are you, as part of nature, to be telling someone else off for being them? And it makes me laugh and it makes me a little bit sad. But paganism, I think, is like a stroppy teenager to me. It's like we've had its childhood. That was sort of the Gardnerian era, if you like, coming up to when it suddenly became a boom and the craft happened and Buffy the Vampire Slayer happened and Charmed and all of that lot. being remade. And it's now the thing of, okay, we've gone past the it's cool. And the people who thought it was cool in their teens are now stuck with it. And we're all here, because we're all entering middle age, or thereabouts. I'm not judging. It's the thing of, right, we are now maturing. Pagans are maturing, and there are now multiple generations of pagans. There are pagan grandparents and great-grandparents. So where is this faith going? What are we doing with it? Because it is incredibly fluid. We are having to move with the technology, and we are having to move with the world, and people take that and find a home in environmentalism, for example, and become activists. Or people look at other marginalised groups. Hello, rainbows. There are pagans in every walk of life, but we're still all a community, see? And it is the thing of, you are one pagan, there are many... Oh, you're right. No. I hope everyone can hear me. Sorry, I should have asked. But we are each individual pagans, and we have our own practice. We can then communicate with others as we choose, and that's a bigger practice. And we are still all connected to every other pagan on the planet. And that is an amazing thing. And that includes those people, I absolutely include those people who are pagans but don't tell. And one of the most famous ones that people go, really? They shouldn't really. So Terry Pratchett was a pagan in his heart. He gave to pagan charities. He wrote about paganism. Look at his books. And there's sort of primer for being a witch right there in the books, and possibly a wizard, but go figure that out. It's Hollywood people who are pagans and don't come out until it's suddenly that they are outed. That happens. It is very much that connection. We see it, and when you spot it, as in the 80s, if you watched Robin of Sherwood, you would spot, oh, there's Herne, there's some paganism, and it's on BBC One at 5 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday. And you spot it and you're happy because you see yourself represented. But that is becoming more and more. So my question really today was, this is what community is. But what are we making it? What are we doing with it moving forward? And I used to always say my druidry could be summed up in the phrase, what are you doing? As in, what are you doing right now? And some wag will go, I'm listening to you. And I go, I'm talking to you. But what are you doing? What are you doing with your life? What are you doing with your job, your family, your community? Do you like it? If you do, great, carry on, explore. If you don't, why are you doing it? Explore that. And this is what paganism is. It's evolving. It's examining our practice. It's changing as we get older and as we need different things. And paganism, as a stroppy teenager that I think of it as, it's going, right, where's my place? And its place is everywhere. But how are we connecting that? We can't police it by telling people what it's not. We cannot say to people, that's not right, that's not paganism. Okay, the hardest thing in the world would probably be defining what is not paganism, and my example that immediately leaps to mind is Donald Trump. He ain't pagan. If there are pagans in the Conservative Party, I would defy one to show me. But it's the thing of, okay, so why aren't we represented? Why aren't we represented in politics? Okay, you've got the Green Party, and I guarantee there's pagans in that. But where are we in the life that sets the laws and gets things done? And then you think some more. And someone messaged me when Prince William was getting married and said, where's the druid conducting the ceremony? And I said, he's there conducting the ceremony. Because, was it Rowan Williams? It was somebody like that, the Archbishop of Canterbury at the time. And he's an honorary druid, as is Queen Elizabeth, as was the Queen Mother. And yes, it's honorary, okay, that's fine. But they're still, they said yes to that. They went yes. And people don't quite realise the Queen has done what monarchs used to do. She has sacrificed her life for this country. She should be retired by now, living in an old folks' home somewhere. but she's still going, and respect for that. And I get the impression that if someone like that signed up, even as an honorary druid, they still took the time to look into what it meant and to care. And when we stand up as whatever we choose to call ourselves, we are part of that community. And we say, where are we taking it? Are we taking it into public office? Are we going to take it into our local councils? Are we going to challenge our up-and-coming MPs in the elections soon? Are we going to say, right, what are you doing for the land? And it sounds woolly, but climate is a huge thing now, of course. I was taught about it in school, and nothing's been done, and we're still doing that. But the whole, culture of hatred, or culture of basically anyone who's not British piss off, it's not who we are. I get very much a sense of that is not who we are. We are crazy British people who do our crazy British things, and if people want to come and join us, then come and join us. But we have to stand up as pagans and say, this is what I do, and then stand and do it. Yeah? And when we join together as that community, even if it's on social media, I see a lot of people who are, like myself, in some way scared, because that community, as I say, is very big. And for people with disabilities, physical or mental, any kind of spoony disorder, can I say that? Spoon theory. So when you've got enough spoons to get you through the day, there's enough spoons in your mental drawer to get you through the day, and some days there's more than others. Sometimes connecting with other people is the most daunting thing in the world. And other days you just need someone to hear you. And this is what we have now. This is what the community is, and this is, I think, where we need to grow it. You can have someone in public office you can call on. That would be wonderful. But in the meantime, you've got people like me who stand up as public professional pagans, or you've got private, quiet pagans who you've made friends with on the other side of the world. You can only speak to on Facebook or some kind of messenger, but they are still there for you. You have that connection, and together you figure it out. You figure where you're going. You figure where your paganism is going. And to use a social term, it's sort of microcosm and macrocosm. You know, if you think of quantum theory, they're saying quantum theory represents what shamans have been doing for centuries, and science and religion are coming together more than ever. I think modern pagans are coming to science and going, wow, and having that thrill of discovery. And the modern scientists are going, yeah, wow, this is amazing. And you see it in Professor Brian Cox, you see it in, you used to see it in Sir Patrick Moore, all of these wonderful scientists discovering magical things, like electricity once was. Electricity was magic, wasn't it? Copyright Cat Weasel. I'm old. No, Cat Weasel was a druid, wasn't he? Scruffy old bloke in a robe? Yeah, okay. Me in the morning. But it's the thing of who are we and what are we doing? As I say, what are we doing? But the what are we doing part of my druidry has evolved from when I first wrote the book in 2012, and now it's more what can I do? So in the sense of how many spoons do I have? Sure, how much energy do I have to do X, Y, and Z? But what can I do? What skills do I have that I can contribute to the pagan community? I don't mean lie down and let all the pagans have whatever they want, because there's a lot of, as I say, pagan organisations, and once you volunteer, that's it, you're sucked into some sort of wormhole, and, oh, would you mind doing this? Would you mind doing this? Would you mind doing this? And before you know it, it's a job. It's a full-time job as a volunteer, and you are getting nothing for it. And that is not healthy, because I firmly believe in the give and take of energy. So if you are giving energy to something, please respond in kind. Yes, I mean, that can be money, absolutely, or it can be trade, or it can be someone doing something for you in return, making something for you, whatever is fair exchange. But you cannot just live on volunteering, because you will exhaust yourself. So what can you do? Just you. And for me, usually it's writing. As I say, I love telling stories, but it's blogging recently. That's been very much a thing where my inspiration will hit me and I'll be like, wait, I've got to get it down right now. And other times I'm sitting at the computer going... And there's an old video of Terry Jones explaining how inspiration works. And he's sitting at his notebook with his pen, just like... and completely procrastinating. And some days that's what it's like. And you cannot do the thing you do because the inspiration is just not coming. It's not flowing that day. Go and make a cup of tea. Do something else. What can you do? And I'm not saying contribute 100% of your life to your paganism. Although I think in some sense you do that anyway, just by doing something honestly. By living your life honestly as a pagan, you do. But by giving of your skills, even if it is in a quiet way, by creating a story, by creating art, by creating a YouTube video. You tell me, what can you do? By putting something out there that is your voice, it's your paganism, as I say, from here and from here. You are doing something, you are part of that community, even if it's just you. And sometimes when I'm writing, it feels like I'm just tapping away at a laptop. I can't hear what people are going to react to. I spoke on Radio 2 once, and it was me on the phone talking to Simon Mayo. And I'm just standing in my house on the phone, telling him off, as it happens. And then we finished, and suddenly my phone started to buzz, and I found out that Radio 2 has 3 million listeners. And quite a lot of them were people who knew me. And it's, I just heard you on the radio. You cannot conceive of that. When you throw your voice into the world, you can't really conceive of where it's going to end up. And someone once told me, when you write a book, you let it go. It's like letting a child leave home, because it's out there now, and people will make of it what they will, and some will like it and some won't. But you did it, and you did it honestly, and now let it go. And that is the wisest advice. But that was my part of paganism at that time. And now I can look at it as it's a historical document, essentially, of me then. And now here's me now, going, right, we need to be more active, I think, as pagans. But I'm not forcing anyone. I'm trying to encourage. And as a druid, you try to inspire through storytelling, through your actions, through your life, through what you do. And I try to do my best. I always say that. When I'm doing ritual and I'm washing up, whatever I'm doing, I say I try and do my best. And some days my best is getting out of bed. And the other day I was in such a bad way, I got dressed by 1 o'clock. Woo! You know those days? And I'm hearing solidarity over there. It's some days you can't. Some days all that you can do is just look after yourself. But that's okay, because if you don't do that, what chance have you got? Husband over here works for the ambulance service. And the amount of times people say, oh, I didn't want to bother you. And the people who didn't want to bother them are the ones who really need it. They're probably having a heart attack or something. But, oh no, it's fine, I'll be okay, I'll just take paracetamol. And it's the thing of look after yourself, but look after yourself. Properly do it. Oh. Paparazzi!
Thank you.
I'm on the menu for here.
I've been all the way looking for this room.
Paul, have you put this in your TARDIS?
And the Western security guards, they're like, I don't know. They've only been here a week.
Nearly the children are after this when they're still. Nobody knows where.
Okay, so we're in the TARDIS, right? Carry on, he says. Lost my place. I didn't have a place. It is very much, this is it, it's being spontaneous sometimes. It's dealing with what life throws at you. Whether it's a random guy in high-vis walking in on a talk, or whether it's your own body saying, no, you can't do that today. You had great plans, but you can't do that today. You physically cannot cope with people. You absolutely cannot make phone calls. Just reaching out from your own little house zone. If you think of your house as your own space, you can't reach out beyond it. Sometimes you can't reach out beyond your own room. And that's very true as paganism seems to attract a lot of nutters. Speaking as a nutter, I've not got a card, I should get a card. Nutter. I got turned down for PIP, so I don't know if I'm disabled or not. Yeah, DWP. This is an example of the community not standing up to do what it should do. But I knew I wasn't going to get that PIP. I tried, and it was horrendous. That killed my day. That was all I could do that day because I was being nervous. Then I had an interview. Then I was dead. And I still have nothing to show for it. But I know if I need it, if I need help, I can call on my community and say, even if it's solidarity over Facebook, if it's silly gifs or pictures of puppies or whatever it is, there is always solidarity in that community, and that's just here. That is literally just a picture here, and we are finding that. We are finding the technologies that allow us to connect. So even when we are stuck in our room or a house, or between me and the kettle, I've often spoken of making a cup of tea as a restorative ritual, totally. We can still reach out. And I love also noticing the synchronicities as a pagan. And people say there are no coincidences. This week I have been thinking about this talk and thinking, what am I going to say? And I've been seeing so much about community. And just the other day, my fellow author Nimue Brown wrote a blog on community specifically. And I said, do you mind if I quote you? And she wrote, community for me is based on sharing the risks, struggles and problems, sharing the triumphs and successes. Community means not leaving anyone hungry or homeless. It means taking care of your sick, coming together for big projects and honouring each other's lives and our journeys. We can do that to some extent. But on another, she's touched me just by that on a phone. That's amazing. It's a privilege to be able to have this. I pay this off monthly via my phone plan. I don't have the money for an iPhone. But it's still recognised as a privilege to have that and have that connection. Even if you've got a crappy old laptop, you can still connect with so many millions of people. And then, if you step out of your door and come to a place like this, you see those people. And if you're standing in the foyer for any length of time, there'll be hugs, and there'll be, oh my goodness, it's you, and wonderful happiness and greetings. And that is the community again. It's the microcosm touching the macrocosm, which sounds rude. Sorry, scientists. We are learning as a pagan group, as whatever you call yourself. At the end of the day, I say I am Cat and I am a druid. But I can scale that back to just I'm Cat, this is me, I do what I do. If you don't like it, it's all right, I don't know. If you do like it, fantastic, let's go explore stuff. And it's that, we are still childish enough to have the joy in our faith. And for that faith to inspire joy in us, we are telling our stories, we are seeing ourselves more on television, I don't even want to say that, in the world. We are seeing what options are available to us. And then we look and we go, right, what am I doing? What can I do? What can I do to help paganism along? What can I do to help other people in this community? How can I connect with that? And some days you can't, some days you can. But I think my point is that no matter what you do, you are always connected. You are connected in mind and heart and spirit because you identify with that sacred in nature and as that part of nature. Because no matter what, if you wake up every day and are acknowledging, wow, I'm here, that's a pretty pagan thing. And if you don't wake up one morning and if my husband comes to get you and goes, no, Pulse, you're still part of nature. I'm doing a funeral this week. I'm celebrating a life. And I actually have the privilege of having met the person first. Usually when I do funerals, it's for people I don't know, so I have to be told their stories. I met this person. And she couldn't talk much, but I met her and I will tell her story. And Husband currently has a cold. So I've been thinking, oh, right, okay, by Thursday I'll probably be like, I will still stand up and I will still tell that story because that was my promise. And I will do my best. And I will use throat lozenges. Is that you use what you can and what tools you have to deal with whatever life throws at you. Yeah? You can use the wonderful medicines that they're selling down below. You can use the medicines that the NHS provide. You can use the medicine that is storytelling. Yes, I absolutely include TV dramas, Netflix box sets, and the cinema. These are all still stories. I loved the previous Doctor Who writer, Russell T Davies, is Welsh and has spoken often of the Welsh love of storytelling. And if you look on the side of the Welsh Conference Centre in Cardiff, which is used a lot in Doctor Who, it says Arwen. They always include the shot that says Arwen. And I'm just sitting there going, there's your inspiration. We are evolving what we do. We are evolving what we believe. The planet is evolving, we are evolving too. What are you doing? What is your story? Where are you going with it? What can you do? Thank you. Any questions? Was I talking rubbish?
Not a question, but I just want to say you look really beautiful today.
Oh, that's
Told you.
I have seen a lot on Instagram, all of these wonderful, glamorous young ladies out in the forest hugging trees with makeup all over and dreadlocks and gorgeous jewellery and everything that looks amazing. And I'm just sort of looking at myself going,
You look amazing.
You look fantastic.
I see you are. So you are who you are, and if you're happy with that, I mean, I did not have the spoons this week to dye my roots. I'm really aware of it. But it's the thing of, you still do what you do. And I said this morning, I was shaking before this. I said, I've got my bravery. My bravery is my coffee cup, it's my knitting, it's outside armour, and it's red lipstick. Because you can't wear red lipstick and be scared, because you are brave. And I actually often think makeup, yes, it's a mask, but it's war paint too, isn't it, ladies? And guys. When you put lipstick on, it's a ritual act. And I try and do it like that. And I'm like, right, I'm going to speak. So let this help me speak well. Yeah? I really do get ready like that. And I love hearing about actors getting ready, because it's very similar. But, thank you. Bye.
What you said about why haven't we got enough people in those places of power who are pagan?
Mhm.
And I wonder if is that because people who feel that way go a different path?
Yeah.
Or is it because it gets knocked out of, idealism gets knocked out? I know lots
Yeah.
of councillors and politicians,
Oh, yeah.
and I just see it being taken away and knocked out of people.
Yeah.
And, you know, how do we redress that? We don't just want
Good question,
3
isn't
or
it?
4 people in green cards to be
That's right.
pagan. We want everybody at the top to have to have those sorts of beliefs.
Yeah. In all honesty, I know a lot of pagan counsellors, and the fact that there are a lot of pagan counsellors is wonderful. And pagan counsellors that have flown the Druid Network flag and the OBOD flag and pentagrams and whatnot. It's happening slowly. But I think, again, this is societal change, isn't it? This is people standing up and saying, we want this. And part of me thinks, well, you look at the House of Commons and you look at, okay, there's a lot of old white guys. Sorry, old straight white guys. Old straight white guys who are fully able-bodied. Do you see what I mean? Each one's putting them into a little lessonless box. Oh, and rich, of course. You have to be rich, don't you? But then you see the odd backbenchers stand up and say their thing, and I'm just sitting there generally going, yes! Get them a microphone. And it's the thing of, right, we have to stand up and do it, but the system as it is so broken, isn't it? We need to change the system. So what can we do?
It's interesting, I was talking to an MP the other day
Sure.
about Theresa May, about, what
Yeah.
happened with her. And what was really interesting, because I said, I feel don't get me wrong, I'm not a Conservative,
No.
but I felt she was bullied by men around her.
Oh, completely. She was thrown to the wolves.
Yeah, I said
Completely.
this to this MP, and he said, well, she should have been harder and stronger. She shouldn't be in politics.
That's not good, because that's just
Quite.
she did her best
She did. Yeah.
against the odds,
Yeah.
and she didn't necessarily do it very well.
No.
But that's my judgment on it. I think she did the best with what she had, which wasn't. She was working against a tide, and it was
And she's
that
not
tide.
able-bodied. She has scoliosis and everything.
This
as
is
well.
it, and she's a mother, and all these other things. And I'm amazed she didn't have a nervous breakdown. You know what I mean? It's
It's
appalling.
just this idea that actually, if you want to be a politician,
Mhm.
you've got to be hard as nails.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All these women are leaving because of their
That's right.
abuse and they're fearful.
Yes, there was the BBC journalist lady who became an MP. I can't remember her name. She's rude, but she quit because of all of the nonsense,
Yeah.
and because people who are good and ethical, perhaps people, are getting broken by the system. Those who are, well, I saw an article which put up the idea that those who are in power are slightly psychopathic.
Yeah, you have to
Or
be,
sociopathic, yeah. You have to be oblivious to all of the people shouting no.
Yeah.
Often, you see the House of Commons, that happens. But I'm living in hope that, I mean, Caroline Lucas has got her seat back year on year. Gradually voices are happening, and we have to challenge those people who come canvassing at our door and saying, right, how are you representing me? And I live in a safe Conservative seat, and the guy who is my MP, his name might as well have an asterisk and a gammon written underneath. He is the epitome of what that means, and he's never answered my tweets and my emails, funnily enough. I've always asked him polite questions, he never answers. But we have to do our best to change the system. And at the moment, I think, this is my opinion, but I think we have failed somewhat as a generation. But I see the generation coming up, and I see them marching and talking, and Greta Thunberg getting so many people cross at her, and she's just a teenager. You think, okay, let's keep raising our voices, even if it's just a little bit. And the fact, I love that we could sit at Pagan Pride for 10 years in a park, thousands of people. None of us were arrested. Years ago we would have been, so that's changed. I've marched on the Pagan Pride March, which was hilarious, because people are looking out of windows, and you can see it on Twitter, people saying, Lord of the Rings is outside. It was one of the quotes. It was, hello. But the police would ask me, as we were going along, they'd see me smiling and looking relatively approachable, because I always did it in normal clothes. They would say, what's this about? And I'd stop and be telling police officers, and that sounds really good. That sounds like, and they'd come along, and they'd join. And then you have, so many prides, you know? You have so many prides. You have gay pride, you have pagan pride, you have all the different abilities representing now. You have people in certain jobs representing. As I say, pagan police. You know, I'm saying it wrong, I'm really sorry. He's going to shout at me. Down the video camera. It's Police Pagan Association, because they are police first. And they've got a very good sense of duty, but the amount of heathens who are in the police force, I love it, because they are so very moral, and they've got their idea of where they want to be in the world, and they will stand for the people. And I think if there was more pagan police on the front line of pickets, they'd probably quietly break the line, you know, and just change sides. And I've heard some officers say that they hate to be asked to stop protests because they agree with it. So we make little changes, and big changes happen, yeah.
So thinking about this idea of change in the future.
Brace itself.
Sorry, this is
It's going to be a whopper, go on.
It's kind of going around the houses a bit. I'm thinking about the fact that you spoke about the community, the pagan community, having been a child, now being a stroppy teenager, having had a certain way of being, a certain mode of communication, which was pamphlets and books and private meetings, and now we're talking about its internet community, Facebook community, private message. It's still hidden. It's still the visibility. And I'm just wondering, do you have a thought about what is the next step in the maturation process of the pagan community? And does that include a different nature of visibility?
I think it's happening in the sense of nowadays you can be in an office and put a few crystals or a nice picture of the goddess on your cubicle, and people say, oh yeah, that's so-and-so, they're a pagan. And it's allowed now. You know, it's okay, it's just who they are. And people have said to me, oh, I tell people about me, they tell people about me, oh, druid. And when they say the word druid, they think of me. And when people say the word witch, they think of the first witch that they know, or their main friend who is a witch. And we are always represented in that way, yeah? So I think now that people can talk about it, I say it often, I've never been insulted when I've been in ritual gear in public. I've had silly things shouted at me, like Wingardium Leviosa, and stuff like that. But people always laugh, and I laugh too, I laugh back, I don't get offended, and then they come and talk to me. And that's where the barriers break down, isn't it? Where you're not being offended, and you go, I am highly offended at you being religious hatred at me. It's like your Christian guy outside. We don't hate him, no matter how much he might think we do, because it suits his agenda. We are confused by him, because you don't see pagans on street corners with microphones. Mm-hmm. We do our stuff more effectively by talking to people at the level they're at. If the person coming up to me, if their level is Wingardium Leviosa, I will talk to them like that. I will say, yeah, spells are like focus, like Harry Potter's wand. You know, it's true. And do you dance naked under the moon? We're British. Look outside. No. Jesus.
Rarely, at least.
I've done sweat lodges. That's been the nakedest I've been outside, and the sweat lodge is really hot. So then you come outside and you steam like a kettle. It's great.
Now you talk about the internet, though. Without the internet, I wouldn't have known there was anybody else like me.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? So
Oh yeah. I didn't for years. It was. I come from a small village in Sussex. You watch Blackadder and the definition of a rotten borough, and that's where I lived. I'm not even joking. But it's the thing of if you can't connect, then that's not happening. But you get more pagans on the TV now. You get Professor Hutton talking all the time. He's always on the radio and the TV. I've been on the BBC. Once you're on a journalist's Rolodex, they'll call you up, and I sort of always speak, imagining you guys, imagining an audience of pagans listening and going, there's a pagan on the telly, there's a pagan on the radio. The more that happens and is normalised, the more people will know. And it is exactly, I blogged about it recently in the sense of back in the 70s and 80s, when you saw a punk, oh my God, oh it's a punk, oh be scared. No, don't be scared, because although some punks were nutters, I'm absolutely sure, some were just people expressing themselves. Again, when I'm in robes, people come up to me and say, that's amazing, thank you so much for doing what you do. How big a compliment is that? You know, it's such an honour to be able to do that. And the worst I've ever had is a child come up to me and say, so what are you supposed to be? She was about 10. And I just sort of looked at her and I said, I'm the priest. And she was like, And none of the other kids played with her, but none of the adults talked to her, and she just sat on her own. And I thought, what has broken you? What have you been told not to do so much that you're this little 10-year-old sinning? And I really hope you grow out of it for your own sake. And this is the thing, we have joy in it, we express it, but we're honest with it. So while we are out and about in robes or dressed in our fancies, all here, if the Christians start yelling hate at us, you just sort of like... and you take away that negativity by laughing and by normalising it and just going, no, this is me, this is who I am. Yeah?
But I think it's the outside world that is frightened.
Yeah.
Because they're not, they have nothing,
Like
I was wanting to say. They perhaps can't connect
Mm-hmm.
with
Or
the outer world and the land we stand on and the air we breathe. And that gentleman outside proved it.
Mm.
He was frightened.
Oh
His
God,
way
yes. Yes,
was
yes.
sort of spouting.
Mm-hmm.
Spouting a whole load of whatever.
It wasn't even Christian, to be honest, but yeah.
But he didn't, he was just there because something inside of him frightened him
Yeah.
with what we were doing. And what are we doing? We're all together, like you say, in a community,
Yeah.
listening to each other, taking away different experiences,
Yeah.
making us stop and think about some things. Maybe, in my case, reconnect.
Yes.
with various things, and I walk away when we leave here tonight, and it's like, well, our community's here, as
Yeah.
it is with any camp we go to,
Yes,
and then it's like, oh, this is the outside world, but do you know what? We stand up for it,
we
and
take
we
it
do
with us.
what we do, how
Yeah.
we do it,
Yeah.
and be proud of it.
Who's going to be happier at the end of the day? Is it going to be us, or is it going to be the dude with the microphone?
It has to be us.
I feel quite sorry for him, really. As long as he's enjoying himself, great, you know. But it is, as long as you are you, and people will say, oh, that's so-and-so, she's whatever you told them you are. And as I say, people come and ask me questions, and the first question is usually, oh, I hope you, please don't be offended, do you mind if I ask you a question? And I was like, if you were going to offend me, you'd have come up and said, oh, you, or something rude. PG rated talk, must not swear. It's the thing of, if you're going to come up and ask a question, you apologise first. First of all, that's very British. Second of all, that's where we are, because of political correctness. We are aware of not offending. But that means we tread gently, at least. So respect to the person for coming up and asking the question, and then I've got a duty to answer in a way they can understand, because I'm standing up publicly saying I'm a pagan. It's like, you cannot take offence if this is what you are doing. You know, if you've got a pentagram the size of a dinner plate on your front, then people are going to ask you about it. And that's who you are. Yes.
Kind of a follow-up question then.
Okay.
I'm thinking about visibility. I'm thinking about, this seems to be like that's the next step, is making things. Do you think some of us have a responsibility to be the visible pagan in the way that you're describing?
I often think that. And the reason I stand up and do this is people who shall remain nameless. You remember those pagans in the 80s who used to appear on Kilroy and stuff? And they looked like absolute messes. And they really would take offence at any little thing. You know who I mean, I'm pretty sure. And I stand up and say, right, I'm standing up and talking because I am aware of this responsibility to the community. And if I'm standing up saying it, he's not. So when people do see a pagan, they see someone who is really, and not a joke, person who tried to exorcise the spirit of Macbeth and the Loch Ness Monster. Yes, indeed. On TVAM. I'm proud enough of paganism and the community as a whole that I don't want it to be taken as a joke. We can laugh at ourselves for sure, but we're serious in what we do, and I try and convey that and go, yeah, we live with honour, we live with respect, we live with responsibility for sure. But we are still finding that way, and part of that is representing, part of it's responsibility. But you don't have to. You can still go out normally and dress normally, and you're still pagan. Yeah.
So I was just going to add to that, but it's not just a case of if I stand up and talk, this other person isn't, who don't want to represent, but it's also if I stand up and talk, these other 10 people that don't feel in a position to be able to be public and talk,
That's right.
they have a voice.
That's right.
They may not be saying everything they want to say,
Yes.
but I'll be saying some of those things.
But at least there's some visibility.
Do you remember there was a badge a few years ago saying, I'm the one the Daily Mail warned you about? I used to work for a Daily Mail company, and every day you get a free Daily Mail, and every day I'd read it with my lunch to see how far I could get in before it went in the bin. And I got to the letters page once. I want to stand up against that. If I say bigoted nonsense, I say closed-minded nonsense, some people are, and you're never going to get past those walls. Yeah, they're walls of fear. They're walls of built up. Oh my God, what is this? No frame of reference, rubbish. I stand up and try and communicate that it's okay. And say, yeah, we all feel disconnection with nature, really. And sometimes I'll say, okay, who's ever done the birthday candle spell? You know, you wish on your birthday candles and you blow them out. That's magic. Everybody does that, you know?
You talked about visibility. Do you feel that the pagan community has got enough visibility for the next generation? Now, you talk about social media. I was helping out with some kids with interview skills and things, and the entire room, they don't use Facebook.
Wow.
They use Snapchat.
Oh, is that what
They
you
use
mean?
other things.
Don't you feel old?
They use things that we, yeah.
Yeah.
I
next
thought
thing-
they would all use, no they don't, they've got other forms of social media.
So they
use.
do.
So then they don't have the visibility through social media.
Sure.
Yeah, they'll see some things on telly and other things, but
Yeah.
they don't see the pagan community through social media that we think they would probably be seeing.
Which is why I like when we have an event like this, or Pagan Pride or something, I think that's what we need, because people see us on the street. You know, how many people in Croydon today saw people all queuing up dressed in their fabulous finery, just go, what's going on? And Pagan Pride, they'd all come into the Arboretum in Nottingham, and you'd see so many, I will say muggles, they are non-magical people. This is not a rude word, people tell me off for using it. Normal people would come in, and non-pagans would come in and investigate it and then leave, and people would, some of them really would go, well, I guess I'm a pagan too then. And that's very common where we live. We're in Derbyshire, and yeah, a lot of people don't meet up as pagans, but I absolutely know those farmers who live around me, they get the seasons, you know, at 4 in the morning when they're up doing the fields. And it's you get it at your level. And some people never will, but the ones who do, it's when they see it and when they are inspired to explore more. So when you see a woman in wonderful ram's horns and flowing robes, you're gonna hopefully talk to her, or you're gonna go and look up what this means. I see it on Instagram a lot, which is again why I sort of think, oh God, I should be prettier for Instagram, you know, I should be one of these Instagram influencers. And I can't be, I'm not 20. But that's fake, you know, that's just that tiny moment of photograph. I would rather put up, I don't know, me just sitting meditating under a tree or something, I don't know, or washing up, something utterly normal. Going, look, I'm still pagan. You're pagan in the gym, you know?
Well,
You're
you're
pagan in
connecting
school.
with that person, you're connecting because
Yeah.
we're not all glamoured up and
We
we're
never
we're
are.
all wave-faced.
This
And
is
you know,
glamoured.
we've got curves, bumps, sags and everything. It doesn't matter how, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
You're-
absolutely.
So, you know, if it's out in a field digging, or if it's
Yeah,
planting a tree with the kids, or it's,
that's
you
right.
know, your hair different colours.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Husband does Santa for the Scouts. And you could hear that, I was sitting outside taking money, and you could hear the kids going, oh, I'm going to try and pull his beard off. And they get in, and it's like,
Yeah, they saw it, it's like, oh, it's a real beard.
yeah, we put white makeup all on his hair and beard, and you looked like Santa. And you could see the eyes just go. But we've said, isn't it a shame you can't do a pagan-style Santa with like a green robe? That would be so wonderful, and it'd get them ideas. But you tried to inspire as the spirit of winter, as the Holly King, within the Santa thing. And this is, what you say, small things, small steps. I think we're good, because I can hear noise outside, so everyone's here for Barbara. That was you messaging me, it's going to be going ping. If anyone wants me, I'm going to be downstairs in the foyer, and I've got books on the Witchfest table. I'm going to be signing them at 2 o'clock, I think. This video is going to be on Patreon, so chuck us $1 and you get to see it again, if you really want to. But thank you so much for coming.